Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about moral compass. There was once a time where a child could turn on Saturday morning cartoons or cartoons after school and get entertained and get a morality lesson at the end of that cartoon. And that does not exist anymore. This type of entertainment that entertained children but also give them a clear view of right and wrong in the world, it was useful because it gave people a way to understand, all right, well, I don't want to be like this guy. I don't want to be some bad guy asshole. You know, it made the world clear.
It made the world a better place. We've seen the decay of people. Just when you listen to rap music or you listen to any of the new music, you hear like, what are these guys on? Why are they so violent? What are they so pissed off about?
Well, but let's start with the early childhood, because with early childhood, your mind is the most impressionable. And that's when you are most susceptible to influence. Your brain is a sponge and it absorbs everything.
Look, Roscoe, this is one of the biggest things that we always talk about, especially in past podcasts. A single-parent household versus two-parent household. But the fact of the matter is, where we came from, you still got the same outcome. Whether you had one or two parents, but that was because what your parents said was being reinforced on television and in school. And other, like if I went to your house, I got the same message from your parents. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's not front. If I acted up and your mom or your dad called my mom, I was in trouble. So there was no lack of supervision, but not only that, there was a clear-cut message coming from multiple places, whether it was school, whether it was other parents, whether it was, hey, Saturday morning cartoons. You know, yeah, we love G.I. Joe. You know, we love the end part, like, well, no one's half the battle. We would joke about it, but then we would do it.
Putting that mantra into a kid's head makes them understand that knowledge is important and experience is important. But so let's talk about some of the different cartoons that had this message at them beginning in the 1940s, where you had Smokey the Bear, who was the longest running ad campaign in American history, originating in 1944. His slogan was, Smokey says, care will prevent 9 out of 10 forest fires. And that later changed to only you can prevent forest fires in 1947. Then you can prevent wildfires in 2001. So leap from the 1940s to the 1970s, where you have Woodsy Owl. Woodsy Owl was created as Smokey the Bear's sidekick. Woodsy Owl promoted environmental conservation and pollution prevention. So his original catchphrase was, give a hoot, don't pollute.
Don't pollute. Yep.
And was later changed to lend a hand, care for the land. So in 1973, there was a cartoon character named Timer, and Timer was used to promote healthy habits, and most importantly, listening to one's body. He appeared in a series of shorts during Saturday morning cartoons on ABC, teaching kids valuable lessons like you are what you eat.
He was a little yellow dude with stick legs. He would make wagon wheels out of like Ritz crackers and shit. Now, the most important one from ABC was Yuckmouth, though. Yuckmouth was very powerful.
Why?
Because he was about brushing your teeth, my nigga. Shit.
Hygiene. He taught kids about hygiene.
Yeah. My name is Yuckmouth. I don't brush. You know, it wasn't quite a rap song, but it was kind of a rap song early on. But you remember these lessons, you know, and this is what I meant by it. You had multiple people telling you the right and wrong, even if they didn't agree politically or spiritually or whatever else, but they still said, as a kid, you should be doing this to further your yada, yada, yada.
Basically, no matter what your household was like, these are basic things that you could use to have a better sense of awareness and self-esteem about yourself. So, and it's really important because these things actually taught kids self-esteem, because hygiene is part of self-esteem. That's like the base fundamental of self-esteem is your hygiene. because there's no way you're going to have busted hygiene and you're going to go outside to play with kids who are brushing their teeth and combing their hair and bathing, and you're not doing either of those. Your ass is going to get roasted.
But bad hygiene is also a symptom of depression and mental health issues. And we see this stuff, but we a lot of times we ignore that kind of stuff because you don't want to get involved. But when we were kids, hey, when you roasted somebody, you kind of cared about them too, because you're like, hey, son, you can't be wearing them pro kids over here. Hey, son, goddamn, your breath smell like, hey, son. And so, like, you didn't want to be that guy. I get it. It's bullying today, but we didn't care about the bullying part. We cared about, okay, you know what? I might not fit into everything, but I still will, take care of myself, make sure I got a haircut. Haircut was $5 back then. You could pay for your own haircut, that kind of stuff. You like I said, you didn't want to fit in, but you still wanted to be healthy. You had a desire to do the right shit, and that stuff pointed you in that direction.
Then we come to the 80s. And in the 80s, there was this character called the Chopper. And the Chopper was a Fonzie-like character promoting healthy teeth habits, warning kids about the dangers of not brushing their teeth. There was also another character called the Free Sandwich Kid. And he was a character teaching kids about the importance of sharing and not taking things that don't belong to them. So then that brings us to 1982, 1983, where He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is a cartoon that was put out by the Filmation production company. This cartoon changed the game.
Hey, but there was one more before that, but I think it's the same company.
Tarzan. Tarzan was the cartoon that
yes.
Filmation put out, and it was on CBS early mornings in the early 80s.
Yeah, Tarzan and Muhammad Ali. But who did Bill Cosby and the Cosby Kids? Weren't they Filmation too?
No, that wasn't something. That wasn't Filmation.
Okay, I thought they was, because if you paid attention, they had similar animators. But you definitely got. They had a whole song about you. Soap and water helps you get it right. So like I said, it was so many of them, and I get the fact that our favorites. My favorite was G.I. Joe and He-Man.
Wait a minute though. See, He-Man was the first cartoon series to feature public service announcements. These cartoons that I named before, those were all separate PSAs that were put before and after cartoons. He-Man was the first cartoon to feature these PSAs, aiming to balance out the show's action qualities.
Yeah, yep.
Because the funny thing is, when you look at the credits for He-Man, when they're rolling at the end, you see child psychiatrist specialist. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Because they want to know like what kids are thinking when they're making these cartoons and how kids will react to them. The next one that also came out in 1983 was G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. Sunbow Productions included PSAs in their episodes, teaching kids about patriotism and social responsibility as well as personal safety. Now, the He-Man PSAs were cool because they were really like morality tales. But the G.I. Joe PSAs, they were like, look, this is how you don't get killed when you're trying to swim outside and a lightning storm comes. Or this is how Roadblock showed you how to stay away from loose power lines that were on the ground. Or this, bro, I learned how to tread water by watching G.I. Joe. I didn't know how to tread water. And then this cartoon showed me how to tread water. And then I went to the pool, in my neighborhood, and I did it, and the shit worked.
Look, this goes back to something like whatever I tell people, like one of the most important things when it comes to the parent-child dynamic is it's important for a kid to look up to their parents. But to look up to your parents, they had to be right. We got a message from somebody else other than our parents, but they were right. And you went and tried that shit. You know what I'm saying? You was like, okay, let me see if this works. And I did the same thing at Monroe, like a little bit later on. Like, okay, this shit works. That's right. That sticks with you forever. That's not learning is forever. That's another part that people just want to completely isolate themselves. Like, okay, I learned enough. No, learning is a lifelong experience, and that shit taught us early on, that whoever made these cartoons was legit, that they were seriously about us doing the right thing. I remember the episode of He-Man where Hannibal had the elephants, and you find out that He-Man's mom was from Earth and all that. And yeah, people are different. They laid that shit on the line for you. They're like, look, just because somebody's from someplace different doesn't mean they don't belong with you. I remember those messages. You care. They weren't preachy, and they didn't tread on your own identity. All the while they were teaching you how to respect other people's identity. It wasn't this thing where you have a whole message, the LBG2 whatever, and erase yourself kind of thing. No, you were just as important as the other person, but you need to treat them with respect and intelligence. And that's what we taught.
What I found interesting is that Sunbow also made another cartoon called Transformers. Now, Transformers only had one PSA, which I found interesting, but I guess they, because they had it in G.I. Joe, I guess they didn't feel like they needed to cover it in both shows. Because they know kids were watching both shows.
Break it down. There were 3 shows that we all watched: He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers. And then there were and those were the ones during the week though. And now every once in a while, G.I. Joe would be on Saturday, but that would be like a new season.
But see, what that is, that's only because it's a 5-episode movie that a new movie they were putting out.
And so, so what I'm saying is we got different messages on Saturday that were just as important, but you weren't burnt out on a character. You didn't watch the same character over and over. During the week, you knew, hey, it's Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man during the week. On the weekend,
Super Friends.
Yes, and Super Friends have been doing it. They're the OGs. Hey, if somebody was choking, they told you what to do, how to do the Heimlich maneuver. Remember that shit? So that's it. Like I said, the reason we even had this conversation, we had joked a while back that I had told Roscoe about it.
Do you remember the He-Man? The Mr. T cartoon.
Yes,
the Mr. T cartoon had PSAs in it as well.
All throughout it. It wasn't just the end, though.
It was a continuous PSA.
Look, but like I said, we talked about this because we saw a little podcast where one of the guys on the podcast said that he had a friend that was a school teacher, and he said the kids are so different now. And he said the reason is because of this. And we kind of chuckled at the beginning, but when you sit down and realize how important these messages were to us and how they're still relevant to us to this day and how we learned. And yeah, like, so even when your parents were giving you a message like, hey, don't run with scissors, hey, don't eat, don't eat an hour before you go swimming, you were getting the same message, if not a different message, but it's just equally as important from your, hey, I'm watching Transformers. Hey, Bumblebee said don't do this. Roadblock was the best though. Roadblock was making sure that you wasn't fucking nothing up. He-Man at the end of the episode, like, hey, what did we learn today? The source was so. Like I said, these weren't just messages. These lessons are still relevant to this day. And some of the stuff, when you have kids, you teach them some of the stuff you learn from that. Like, hey, if you see a power line down, rubber shoes, get away, call somebody. That stuff. My mom was like, don't get out the car. Because you would talk about it.
Ghostbusters had PSAs too, and it was the Hanna-Barbera Ghostbusters, which featured a character trying to sell pork chop sandwiches, highlighting the importance of honesty and not taking credit for others' work. Pork chop sandwiches.
So that was a knockoff Ghostbusters, but hey, yeah, we watched that too.
But Jim and the Holograms, I think it was like 85. They had the DIC Entertainment produced PSAs for that show, focusing on topics like friendship and self-acceptance. And then also there was Inspector Gadget, which is also DIC Entertainment. And for that show, they were teaching kids about safety and responsibility.
Yeah, I remember watching that shit in New York when I first saw it. Was in New York, and like you said, at the end, Penny and I can't think of the dog's name. They would lay it out like, hey, Professor Gadget, Uncle Gadget, he's a robot. You can't do what he does.
Right, exactly. So then you also there was this long gap where cartoons had changed in the 90s, and they were really different. And it seemed like the main characters were getting softer. And they were like, the animation was getting cheaper, and it wasn't as high quality as what you were getting from Sunbow and Filmation and DIC Entertainment. It began to look pretty different altogether. So, but not just the quality of the cartoon, but the messaging in the cartoon had seemed to disappear. And so that seemed to be completely non-existent until about 2020, when the Cartoon Network had an anti-racism PSA. And it was a PSA encouraging viewers to tell the whole story by not viewing history through a white lens, featuring characters from Steven Universe. You ever seen that one?
Yes. I haven't seen that one, but I have seen Steven Universe. It was like 3 different races of beings and all this. Yeah, they were big on that. You could tell.
Yep. So while I was a kid, hip hop music was growing and changing very rapidly. And there was, hip hop music started off as party music. And it remained that way until about the late 80s, when the gang violence of the West Coast began to spread across the entire country, and it took hold in the black communities across America. And you saw the influence of crack cocaine by way of the CIA and Freeway Ricky Ross working its way into these communities. This began to reflect itself in hip-hop music. A teenager at a Public Enemy KRS-One concert was killed in 1988. That inspired KRS-One and Public Enemy to form the Stop the Violence movement. They recorded a song called Self-Destruction that was released January 15th, 1989.
I thought it was 88. Okay, I got it. Okay. I got that.
No, because you got to understand, the kid was killed in, like, I think it was the summer of 88, or like the fall of 88. So then they went in the studio and they recorded that. They got everybody together to record that. So there was a VHS cassette entitled Overcoming Self-Destruction, the Making of Self-Destruction music video that came out with that song's release. I'd never seen it. I'd like to see that, actually, that documentary.
Real talk, I hadn't. And on the flip side, of course, the West Coast, they went with the same gang. So well, 1 year later, May 22nd, 1990, the biggest names in West Coast hip-hop formed the West Coast All-Stars. They released a song, We're All in the Same Gang. That song helped spread a message of peace in an environment that was being destroyed by gang violence and CIA-driven crack cocaine distribution in black neighborhoods. You got to remember, what, 92, 93, they had a truce. And it was legit.
But what brought that out, though? Why the truce?
I forgot why.
Because of the LA riots and the Rodney King incident.
And also one of the things that came out, so many of these Bloods and Crips were telling you, a lot of the shootings, a lot of the drive-bys were being done by cops. Now, I'm not negating the fact that Bloods and Crips were killing each other, but a lot of that stuff would start from a cop rolling through the neighborhood, shooting somebody, and blaming it on the other side.
That happened during the truce because these Rampart cops, these dirty cops, were dressing up like the opposing gang and going to a neighborhood and shooting that neighborhood up to start some shit, to try and get some crime going, because they were starting to lose their funding because there was a truce. See, this is the dirty little secret that people don't like talking about. LAPD was the most militarized police department in the world. And they received millions and millions of dollars in funding and used military equipment every year. So with these black people not killing each other anymore, their funding is going away. So they got to figure out how to keep the money coming. So let's keep these niggas killing themselves.
It lets you know 2 things. One, they weren't about the solution. They were, cops. When you talk about cops and racism, we're not talking about traffic stops. These motherfuckers were shooting black folks on purpose to cause a fight. And the other part, recently, I thought it was 14 individual gangs were isolated in the LAPD. Did you see that article about it? I think it was a black chick who wrote the article, who did the research, and they don't want that shit out. But she identified so many, and like 5 of them are white supremacist gangs, or literally white supremacist gangs. I don't want to get the numbers wrong, so please forgive me. I don't have the article in front of me. But we're not talking about an article back in 93, 92. We're talking about an article that was written in 2009, 2019, maybe 2020, and she had identified. She might have been white. She identified 14, maybe 20 different gangs inside of the LAPD, and a couple of them you had to have kills just to be part of them. So that lets you know right there, like these motherfuckers are not good people. And these cops get passed around from precinct to precinct. So yeah, look that shit up. When you find that article, it'll blow your mind.
So let's go back into time for a moment and talk about where these morality codes come from. So one that stands out and you're taught about in school as a small child is the Hammurabi Code. It was a code of conduct that became a legal document and a binding law in 1755 BC, Babylon, Mesopotamia. It comprised 282 case laws that included pricing, tariffs, commerce, and trading regulations. It also included laws for marriage, divorce, criminal law, assault, theft, slavery, and debt. 600 years before the reign of Hammurabi, a man named Uruk-agina led a revolt against the tyrant ruler of the city Lagash. The records of the revolt speak of liberty and property long before these things were written down to be commonplace ideas.
One of them cats had the first constitution, but I can't remember who it was now. Was it a Persian society or something? But they literally, as we know it, a constitution was established back then after one of these revolts. I can't remember. Please forgive me. This is thousands of years ago. I just read about this. And yeah, it lets you know that what we're doing now is not new, but it's just as equally as important as it was back then.
The Epic of Gilgamesh ponders the idea of the quality of life and the rules that govern it. Before that, Moses returned from the top of Mount Sinai with 10 commandments on how to live life and be a peaceful and righteous person. But what you got to understand, though, is what these laws did. They gave rules to savage-ass people. So let's take a little detour into Christianity for a second here, because when people talk about the Bible and people talk about the Old Testament and the New Testament, there's a clear delineation. What divides the Old Testament from the New Testament? Can you tell me?
Shit.
One guy. He's the reason why New Testament exists.
No, it's the death of a martyr named Jesus. That's what it's about.
Hold on, say his name again. Who is it?
Jesus, Yahawashah. It was the death of a martyr named Jesus. Changed everything for 2,000 years.
What did he say that he was here to do?
He said, "I was here to enforce the law." He said, Matthew 14, "I was here to enforce the law, not do away with it." He explains that he was the one showing you that you could follow these rules in the Old Testament, but still not be manipulated by the Levites.
But this is okay. What people need to understand why God sent him is because there was a paradigm shift in thinking in the type of people that were living, because Old Testament people are some savage motherfuckers, man. Like, they're all id.
Yes.
They're all like, I'm going to do what I feel. I'm going to do what feels good to me.
It was about carnal knowledge. And Christ was divine knowledge. And the carnal knowledge, and the people this is why you hear about the Levitical monks, and this is why you hear about Leviticus so much. That's where they told you all the rules for living. Like, don't eat this, don't do that, don't do this. But they kept it secret. Like, you had to pay these motherfuckers to get this information. Or they would have sex with your daughter or son, then give you information. They're like, "Hey, I'll teach you the rules if you let me do something nasty to you." I'm like, "Oh, goddamn, P. Diddy, fuck this shit."
No, I don't need the rules. I'm good. I got my own rules.
Yeah, shit. But that's the
But see, but these are the kind of people that existed 3,000 years ago.
They exist now. But it's important.
Okay, that's a good point. But the whole thing is that you had to give rules to these savage ass people because they were fucking their offspring.
Yep.
and they were, sleeping with this person and sleeping with that person, and
Hey, that was one of the rules. It's not in the Ten Commandments, but that was a rule where they said fathers should not be having sex
you
with the
have
same
to
one.
tell people this shit so
Yeah,
they
it
don't
should.
do it.
Your father should not be having
That
sex with the same
means
women that
that
sons are having sex
means
with.
that
It was a
is
problem.
common. That's a
It was an issue.
problem. That means
Yeah,
if you
it
got to
was an issue.
address this in a book that people have to live by, these knuckleheads cannot get their minds together to
It
realize that,
can't be
oh,
trusted.
I'm doing wrong. Yes.
Can't be trusted. Um. Oh my God,
Keep
you get
going.
deep
Go ahead.
sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. So there were so many rules, and I remember one of the stories from the Bible that we had read in honors English class was when. Did you ever see that one where they found this angel, and the angel couldn't fly anymore? It had these messed up wings, and so they were using the angel to heal each other. So one of them, like he had a broken leg, but he touched the angel and he grew extra tooth, shit like that. And so it's some crazy shit. And then when the shit didn't go down like they wanted, them niggas was there to fuck the angel. They came to get some ass. Like there was a group of people that like, look, we know this clearly is a motherfucker from God, but we want to put our dick in his ass because that's gonna make us more powerful.
Why?
Dude, I remember I was in Miss Lang's honors English class when we read this story, and they kind of like glanced over that part, but that she was like, yeah, this is based on a story from the Bible where this and this happened. I'm like, oh man, that made a turn real quick. that went left quick as a motherfucker. But that tells you how selfish people were back then, and that they wanted to be God. They wanted
But
to have
when you
something that.
go into these remote areas of the world, you still see people living in these savage ways. You go to Afghanistan, you got these rich guys, you know what I'm saying, these sheiks
Doing what they want,
with
doing
these
whatever the
little
fuck they feel
boys.
like.
They have like these little boys that they have dancing them and they have sex with, and I'm like, dude, this is evil
Hey,
shit.
hey, oh boy, when he was the guy that interviews the CIA dude, but he's interviewing that black guy that was a Army Ranger.
You talking about Sean Ryan?
It wasn't Sean Ryan this time, but it was somebody else interviewing him. And one of the questions they asked, like, so who are the strangest? And he said the Afghanistans. He said they had no hope. All they knew how to do was fight. He said their logic and how they viewed the world was completely off, and it was difficult dealing with them because you're here trying to save the day. They don't care if it changes or not. I don't want to embellish because I don't have him on, but he talked about some of the people that as a society they were different. They were
Okay,
completely
that's
different.
a biblical mindset. That's
No,
a people
100%.
who are
That's deep.
living in a 2,000-year-old, 3,000-year-old mindset. And
And they still believe tooth for tooth, eye for eye. They'll still chop your hand off if they catch you stealing. And that's why what you're saying is so important because Old Testament is eye for eye. New Testament is purity,
so
forgiveness.
what you have is almost like you're dealing with an alien race of people. Like when you're dealing with somebody whose thinking is so alien to your morality, and okay, people like that, they only understand power.
Yes.
And it's like you have to, and see, you had to force law on them to make them let women go to school. Now, Afghan women can't even clap in public. They can't sing in public. They can't talk to each other in public. Like this is like such little dick mentality. You know what I'm saying? Like you a weak bitch if you like suppressing women that much. Little dick energy, dude.
And Saddam finally got overthrown, but I started reading about his sons, Uday and Usay. Have you read about them niggas?
Yeah.
So the skinny one, I'm sorry, what'd you say, bro? The skinny one was just fucking women, just running rampant, and the fat one was trying to create a fucking nuclear weapon for his dad. And the code word was beach ball. His dad was like, "Hey, do we have a beach ball yet?" "No, father, we don't have a beach ball." So you would think Uday was the worst, or which I think is the fat one. Uday, no, the worst was the other brother. He was just having sex with women, and when he was done, if he didn't like you, he would feed you to his dog.
He was
Like
basically like this King Joffrey from like Game of Thrones. Like he was just a shithead rich kid that you wanted to kill.
I've never seen Game of Thrones, but I agree with you. He literally had Great Danes, Rottweilers, and Dobermans that would devour. These girls, they would never find anything. There was nothing ever left of them. And if you try to fight back, if you said you wanted to be a virgin, if you said you were a virgin, it was over. Because he would have you. And after that, he would feed you to his dogs. This is a real situation. Recently, like I said, this was in the 90s. Please forgive me. I don't know the exact dates. But and you when you get to college, you start reading that shit. Then that's when your morality kicks in. Like, wait, well, look, I get it. I like women, but consent. Why would you force somebody to do this shit? And then why would you destroy her afterwards? All because you have the power to do so. I get it. You got to remember, Saddam thought he was Nebuchadnezzar, or he thought he was reincarnated.
Nebuchadnezzar.
Again, here's the other part that we don't understand when it comes to like this, all these different wars. He was done wrong by America. You got to understand, he was fucked over by America. He was told that this would be given to him. I'm not saying he was right in his response. I'm just letting you know. Same thing when it came to the UN and who's the guy in Russia? Right
Putin.
now, Putin. Remember that they made a promise they would never go east or whatever, or never go east. And they have this in writing. So that's why you see the stuff you got going on right now. The war is not what you think it is. Don't get me wrong. He's fucked up because the first thing out of his mouth, he wants to use nuclear weapons. I'm like, why have we not killed this nigga yet? As soon as he started talking about nuclear weapons, y'all should have stuck a fucking grenade up his ass, and it showed everybody. But I digress. People were made promises that weren't kept. Assurances and all that stuff. And so that's why we are where we are. But also, this goes back to these principles that we talked about. If you give your word should be your bond. You should be able to keep your word. Everybody's lied, but when I give you a promise, I promise you I won't go in your yard. And that's the world we live in. A lot of people just they say things just to placate you. They say whatever it takes to get you off their back, and then they're gonna go back and do the opposite shit. That's bad. That's not cool. That's against whatever code that you have. But some people, that is their code. Yeah, we got a homeboy that probably fuck anything. But
you ever fought somebody before you felt like you had to finish that person? You know what I'm saying? Like you couldn't just like, okay, there's certain people that you fight. Once you hit them 2 or 3 times and like you give them like some like deadly strikes and shit, or some really powerful strikes, they're like, all right, man, I had enough. And then you fight a person who won't quit. So there's some people that you fight and you can take them about 3/4 of the way from knocking them out, and they'll be like, okay, I had enough. That's good. They will concede. Then there's the other type of person where you have to knock them unconscious to submit them. You have to make them submit, because either you choke them out or you knock them out. But you have to completely dominate that person.
The fight is not over. Like it'll be months later. Like you'll be playing basketball or something, and you walking up, and somebody already heckled that nigga. Hey, don't make me go get Roscoe. Don't make me go get duct tape. I want to fight you again. And you walking up to basketball court.
So, right. And then then guns came into it. People get so butthurt, they want to take it all the way and finish it. I'm like, all right, cool, man. Well, now I know how to disarm people. So come on. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to show you how that gun isn't going to help you against a guy like me.
The reason we're talking about this is because these are rules. You don't pull a gun on somebody over something minor. Your life was not at stake. All you want to do is get some street cred. And you've heard me say this since we were kids. Ain't a nigga getting a reputation off me. Do you understand? Like, if you think I'm the nigga to get a reputation off, oh my God, I'm going to give you. If I die in the process,
I'm your Huckleberry.
Man, yes, Doc Holliday, I'm your Huckleberry. And so, I guess that's what's so important about these rules, that you shouldn't put somebody in that situation. You shouldn't take it there unless it needs to be taken there. And I hate using this phrase because this is one of those, get that same energy. I hate doing that, but
no, I like it. I'm like, all right, good. No. Bring it up. Keep it up right there, because I'm about to just knock that down to 0.
No, I don't like using it because it's like a cliche now. Motherfuckers be using this shit and don't be serious. Like I told you, I dealt with a situation recently where this chick told my wife, "Oh, girl, walk in your truth, walk in your truth." And when my wife did, she got mad. So a lot of those phrases people don't really mean. But if I say that, keep that same energy, it means that I want to match your energy or exceed it. And
I'm always going to exceed it. My power level is going to be far superior.
Nigga, hey, you think I'm Goku? I'm breaking your motherfucking visor, my nigga. When you scan me, you gonna think I'm a 200, and then you're gonna find out I'm 10,000, 30,000, and you're gonna be, oh shit, shit, my visor just broke, my nigga.
Fucked up.
But yeah, that's why it's so important that you learn how to fight while you learn these other lessons. People think fighting is violence. No, fighting is life. Fighting makes you prepared for what comes your way. Now, we talk about this in past podcasts. I'm black, so the biggest issue you have is that we don't always know how to fight in that particular situation. Some fights are legal. Some fights are you call your congressman. Some fights are physical, where you whip somebody's ass. Some fights are, and I think that's where people mess up, and they confuse violence with fighting. Fighting is not violence. Fighting is making sure that you're protected, in that you have the ability to protect yourself or correct the situation or correct injustices. And that's where we are. The idea that we need more gun laws is stupid, because criminals don't follow gun laws. And what it is like, whenever you watch these shows, there's always some goofy nigga from Chicago, "I don't believe in guns." And I'm like, because you don't believe in fighting. You ain't never been shot. Ain't nobody in your family I lost somebody. Y'all got the same damn story. But the bottom line is that you don't want to fight. You don't want to correct it. You want the government to pass laws and correct it, so you ain't got to think about it or work on it. That's the issue.
I'm gonna tell you how you scare the shit out of somebody who's doing some tough guy shit. Start doing breathing exercises, and they're like, "What?" You start doing shit like that. You start doing like some like rapid breathing exercises to like oxygenate your brain. They will freak out, like it will freeze them in their tracks. See, what I like doing is like just taking a Zen sword and slicing through a person's persona.
Look, people think you're doing Lamaze, nigga. You actually doing some Himalayan yoga shit that will boost your motherfucking adrenaline. And people don't like the punch I land on you. I might go through your chest, nigga. I might do some motherfucking alien shit on your ass. People, like I said, people think that they're ready and they're not, and that's why they got to grab guns and stuff, because they're imitating tough people. They're not. They're not tough themselves. They're imitating an image that they heard in a rap song or saw in a video or saw in a movie. And the truth be told is that that's not it. Because as soon as a motherfucker get up on you, you got to show and prove.
But see, here's the thing though. If you got a dad and your dad raised you right, you will not be imitating something you saw in a song or any of that shit, because you already had some type of like guiding lineage, like some type of, not just reality, but also like just founding principles.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying? But that brings it full circle to what we started talking about, and that's the morality code. This seems to be absent, though. I mean, like we're saying, we have both heard this guy mention this before, how he talked about how, back in the day, you had clear roles in cartoons. This is the good guy, this is the bad guy. And it was always simple. It was simple and plain, like who's good, who's bad. Now, you have this shades of gray bullshit where it's like, oh, the good guy can be bad and the bad guy can be good. And I'm like, that ambiguity is confusing the shit out of people.
That's for adults. That is a show.
There you go. That's for adults.
Because a kid, you need to be on the same page.
It needs to be clear.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think we're there right now. I think we're more worried about writing and shock value and shit like that than we are about how this really is going to affect our next generation. And don't get me wrong, we need those shows. I remember growing up, and what show was The Hitchhiker? Remember we were joking about The Hitchhiker, or any of those anthology shows that were Tales from the Crypt. They were spooky, but those are the ones. And before that was Alfred Hitchcock. I remember Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Now, Alfred Hitchcock had been dead, but NBC had a show, and I remember where they were betting their fingers. And so this dude, they found out he was betting that he can cut somebody's finger off and all this stuff, and didn't have the money. Then his wife shows up. She said, "I'll pay the bill. I'm sorry for my husband." And then she goes, I want the last laugh. And she busts out with her glove and takes her glove off, and all she had was one finger. She's like, "Yeah, I won the last time." And I'm like, what the fuck? It blew my mind, my little 9-year-old mind. But that wasn't the message I got when I watched He-Man earlier. That wasn't the message when I got.
No, because you're watching adult television. Like, that's something that's geared towards adults, or like, adults that are like viewing this with their kids, where they can explain, all right, this is why this happened, that. But see, what's funny is my upbringing was different, because I, with my dad, would go to the video store and we would rent all kind of movies. And like, I was watching 48 Hours, Eddie Murphy movies with my dad when I was a kid. I was watching everything with like, violence and nudity, but my father was there to explain, okay, this is
Yes.
why that person did that.
The
This is
most
why
important
this
thing you
happened.
said, you watch together. Like literally, kids are doing shit on their own, and that's the problem with. That's why they got so many rules for this internet stuff now. And kids, like in Australia, they pass all these laws. If you're under 15, you can't go on the internet and all. Well, how are you going to enforce it? It doesn't matter. It's the uncheckedness of it. It's the fact that you can find and watch stuff without your parents knowing. And then your parents are at work. They're trying to pay the bills. They think that you're playing, and you're not. You're going down a road, a rabbit hole that you shouldn't be going down this early. And that's why it was so important that you watch with your father, because literally you had somebody to explain it, like, hey, that's it. That's not how you treat a woman. All that.
But
Oh, hey,
also understand though that 3 out of 10 homes at that time there were latchkey kids. This was the 80s, man, and so
yeah,
there was
yeah.
like a gang of latchkey kids all across America that were being pretty much raising themselves because their parents were working another job or their parent was somebody who's doing drugs and partying and shit. And
So
that's how
look,
Gen X became helicopter parents.
yeah, because they keep saying they were so mad their parents weren't there. I'm like, their parents were busy providing. Like, my dad wasn't there, but my mom was providing. My mom had two jobs always. So it was like, hey, I get home about 7 o'clock. You put the food in when you get out of school, let it bake, turn the oven off, and you know. So, but again, we had rules, and we understood the principles. We understood that if I didn't cook, I didn't eat. If I didn't clean, I got my ass beat and didn't get no allowance. So you had rules. I knew Tuesday was garbage day. So, because Wednesday the garbage man would come, so you had to go through the house, collect all the garbage, and put it out on the street. So the next morning, you had that rule. I mean, you had those. I don't know what they call them, but we had those, and because of it, we're better people. And I get it that some parents probably spanked you more than they should have, but the fact of the matter is that the world will spank you too.
But see, raising kids is a complex affair because you are balanced between, thinking about the way that you were raised and then applying some of that and then giving them, a little bit something different. But at the same time, you don't want them to be too soft. So you have to strike this balance between being, you know, be a disciplinarian, a philosopher, a rule enforcer, and somebody who is willing to listen, but only listen so much because kids will try to manipulate your ass.
We discussed this 2 podcasts ago. They start manipulating you early, and it's so hard to
Early.
explain that shit. I think one of the hardest things is I've dated a few women, especially women with kids. Women feel because they gave birth to them, they know them better than you. And I'm like, you're not observing them. What you're doing is based on something that happened 11, 12 years ago. Because of that, I know my child better than you. I'm like, hang out with them. And that's why that time you spent with your dad was so important, because your dad was getting to know you. And he knew, okay, I know how to discipline my son because I know what motivates him. I know that if I can give a rule here, you'll test your boundaries, but I got to stop that. Women sometimes are so busy, you know, saying that, hey, I'm the mother, that they don't put nothing on it. They don't add nothing to it. And they don't realize that you got to get to know a motherfucker. Like, yeah, you created them. 9 months later, they pop out. You don't know that motherfucker from shit. You met them at the same time they met you. And until you spend time getting to know them and understand their motivation, like, well, here's another thing that pisses some women off. They're like, well, how do you understand my kids so well? Because I dated you. And I can see in them certain behaviors and certain motivations, and you don't want to be honest about what it is. Like, these are my kids, yes, but you don't see them in you. All you see them as individuals and this, that, and other, but you're not realizing that they're acting like you. They got the same motivations as you. They've heard you complain about this, so they want to correct that in their life. And yeah, you can't talk about relationships to kids. You can't be like, I'm gonna be alone forever, because now your child is searching out a relationship at much too early an age because they're afraid of being alone because of some shit you said on a Thursday night 10 years ago when she was 6, and she's holding that in her head. So it makes it difficult. So when women like, oh, I know my kid, like, do you really? You know where they are, you know what you named them, but you don't understand their motivation. That's what's tough. And and this is what nobody understands. It's called raising. Raising means that raising by definition means elevating. So you're elevating from a child to an adult. These people aren't raising their kids. They're just fucking feeding them, giving them nice shoes. But when you actively participate in the raising process, you are elevating that child from a state to another state. That's why it's called raising. And until people get that shit, they're gonna be fucking up a lot more.
Yeah, that's real. That is real. But people forget those basic fundamentals though. And another thing that people forget is that boys in particular, they seek the adventure. That's why 18-year-old boys go off to war, because they want to learn, they want to see, they're eager to experience and gain life experience, out there in the world, engaging with like real people, until they go to some place like Afghanistan and they're dealing with these savage ass people who are basically in this biblical mindset. If you, like I said earlier, if you want to see what people were like 2,000 years ago, look at people from Dagestan. Look at people from, Afghanistan, any of the stands, okay? Those wild areas.
Any of the stands, the motherfuckers is hard.
I'm not gonna call them hard because I can beat the motherfuckers ass. So
I'm not talking about fighting. I'm talking about as in they've dealt with difficult
they
lives.
just on some savage bullshit. That's what I'm gonna call it. If you want to see somebody on some savage bullshit, look at anybody from Afghanistan, Turkestan, Uzbekistan, any of them. They're all the same. They all have this do as thou will mentality. And, morally, their shit does not align with yours because the way they see women, you being a Western man, they probably don't agree with you on a lot of shit. You know what I'm saying? And the way, there was this comedian that was telling this story about how he went to go do this gig overseas in some Arab country. And these guys were on an oil rig, and they said there was an American unit that was guarding this oil rig, and there was these Arabian dudes that were guarding the other half of the oil rig, and they had a mattress on the floor in this area, and he asked him what's that mattress for? He's like, that's for Wednesdays. He's like, what's Wednesdays? He's like, that's when these dudes, Arabian dudes, fuck each other on this mattress. And I'm like,
oh, you win,
dude. Listen, man, I don't give a shit, man. My sexual urge is not that strong that I just need to go stick my dick. I'll go jack off, dude. I don't need to go do that shit.
Where we? Oh my god! But back to, there was another guy that said something similar. One of those black ops guys. He said, yeah, a lot of that is their own cousins and their own nephews and stuff that they're doing that to. And he said while we were over there, we were trying to stop it. And he said, it's not because you think you're morally superior. You're like, you don't have to do that shit. There's an abundance of everything in society, but instead, they would do their own family like that. And
yeah.
So that was,
But see, the thing is, we're around women all the time. You know what I'm saying? So, getting access to, a woman that's, willing to give you the time of day, you know what I'm saying, is not that hard for us to do. All you have to have is just, some incentive and some drive to go walk up to her and strike up a conversation. You know what I'm saying? I mean, even hookers, this, you have access to that if you need to solve that problem that bad and shit.
And if you ever want to piss a gay guy off, I'm like, because I said something on Facebook, I'm like, you got to be really gay, because women have assholes too. If that's all you wanted, women have 3 holes. That dude got 1 or 2. So you must. I was making fun of gay people, but I guess I pissed somebody off. I'm like, look, nigga, it's not that deep. All I'm joking. I'm just joking. I'm not thinking that deep into it. But all I'm simply saying is, if you want a booty hole, she got 1 too. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't got to do this.
Or just get one of these girls, you know what I'm saying, from one of these cultures that's trying to maintain their virginity, and all right, cool. Then, what you'll get is just somebody who just do it in the ass, or they'll just blow you.
And that shit don't count. They say that shit does not count. I'm like, no shit.
Okay.
Look. But these are why rules are important, but it's also just equally as important who's giving you the rules and why they're giving them. Right now, you have a society giving you rules, you can't post certain shit on Facebook, you can't post certain shit on YouTube, and we've been doing it the whole time. But now all of a sudden it's okay, you go against our ethics and all this other stuff, but you sit here and push other stuff that you don't feel is unethical. So yeah, What we're trying to say is these rules are important. Make sure that you raise your kids and not just house your kids. Make sure that they're watching the right stuff, because so many times the things they're watching when you're not around are counteracting what you're laying down to. When we were kids, we got the same message from our mom, our dad, our neighbor, our school, and our cartoon, and our entertainment. So
Did you ever go to somebody's house when you were a kid and that house was clean all the time? Like,
yeah,
it was never messy, and that told you something about the way the household was run. There was order. There was not a lot of chaos in that household. I can count on like two hands basically how many people that I know from childhood that whether I liked them or not, their mom kept that house clean and in order. And it made me realize that reflects the mindset of the people in that house. So if you go to somebody who has just a messy ass house all the time, there's a lot of mental chaos going on. Now, it doesn't mean that person's morally a bad person,
no,
but
doesn't mean they're good either.
doesn't mean they're good either. But at the same time, there's something to a clean house that it's not just it's not just your mental headspace, but it promotes the flow of good energy. Now, yeah, that's feng shui, but that's also true. You know what I'm saying? When you clean your space, you clean your mind. Jordan Peterson was famous for saying this in his early parts of his career. He was like, clean up your room, clean up your room.
Yes.
And he would say this over and over and over. And he's like, clean your room up. He's like, you want to make all these changes to the world, start by cleaning up your fucking house.
The one that you can control.
That's your shit.
Me and you said something similar when it came to these women. Like you want to change the man you're dating, but you're not raising your son to be a good man. Like the one person that you can affect and make into the man that you want, and you ain't doing it. Instead, you're making him like the nigga that left you. And I used to joke, like, how come you dress your son like that? Because that's the same nigga that left you. And people get mad at me when I say that. But I'm like, look, you want to find a man that has all these values, all these principles, and does all this shit. But the one person you can control and raise and make into that, you didn't bother to do that. So all you're doing is making it worse for the other women when your son gets
cognitive dissonance is a hell of a drug.
It's a motherfucker.
But you see that cognitive dissonance where people are willing to overlook all these flaws, and yet they're reaching for something else. And I'm like, hold on a second. How are you reaching for the toilet paper, but you're standing in shit? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand that.
That Band-Aid ain't gonna take care of that gaping head wound. It don't happen like that. You're looking for a minor solution to a major problem.
There's this comedian. I'm not gonna name him, but he always talks about how he has like problems like wiping his ass, or before he met his wife, he didn't wipe his ass thoroughly, and I'm like, that's disgusting, dude. Like, how do you walk through life like that? He's like, yeah, my ass would itch all the time. I'm like, because you're not wiping your ass, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not wiping you got shit on your skin that's irritating you.
You hope it's a joke. Like, this nigga ain't really living like
But
this.
It's not a joke, because this person talks about it too much. I'm like, oh, you really are that filthy son of a bitch. Like, that's disgusting, man.
You half-ass wipe your ass, nigga. I can't trust you.
You know what I'm saying? Like, your brain is telling you to wipe your ass. That itching that you're feeling is your brain saying, hey, you've got shit on your skin and it's causing irritation. You need to do something about it.
You have no problem with discomfort. You have no problem with fuck it. I'm cool. I'm cool.
That's what I'm saying. Like, when I hear about stuff like that, I'm like, I can't take any advice at all from you, because you can't even wipe your ass. Like, don't quote me some high and mighty pious philosophy, and you can't even wipe your ass. Get the fuck out of here.
Hey, there's a nigga that we grew up with, and he half-ass homeless. And every once in a while, you would give him a ride. I stopped doing that shit because that nigga stink. And I'll be like, it's not funky stink. It's you didn't wipe your ass stink. Like I'm like, oh man, nah, I'm cool. And they be like, well, you see him walking. How come you don't help him? Mind your own fucking business.
Because you ain't smelled him.
Yeah, no. I've known him, So on the flip side, you said you ever been to somebody's house was always clean? Have you ever been to somebody's house that was always dirty? That nigga always had cat shit on the floor. That nigga he had a Nintendo before me, So I would go over there and play the Nintendo, and he would never do what his mom said. He was a piece of shit human being. He was fucked up. That nigga was fucked up. You understand? So I remember one time his cousin that came over, because before we was going to school, we used to walk to school together. His cousin came over. He would let him in to use the bathroom. So his cousin took a shit outside on the by the flowers and shit. And I'm like, you were joking, right? He said, no, man, you wouldn't let me in. And I had to go to bed. I'm like, oh. I glanced to my left. I never looked left again. I never looked left again. I was like, hey, man, I'm walking to school.
So it was probably there until the elements took it away, like the snow covered it up.
Yeah. You remember at the end of Flash Gordon, how the shit just like disintegrated into dust and the dust blew away? That's how that shit was. That shit disintegrated. I assure you. I assure you. So again,
that shit was probably still there when like they moved out.
You get no argument from me. Shit, nigga, I have nothing to say about that. But I just get tired of people trying to blame me some kind of way. Or, don't you want to help them? Like, not really.
Can you imagine like when the landlord had to rent that place out? He had to clean that shit out. He had to get this shit cleaned out and left the windows open probably for like a week just to air that shit out, dude.
They sold it to some handicapped people and they took over the whole place. They bought it as is. I'm pretty sure. And so I don't think he did shit. It was Cruz, Mr. Cruz. I don't think Mr. Cruz did a damn thing. He was too old anyway. So I think he just sold it and took his investment and went on about his business. I remember he had went to the hospital right before that happened. So I think he was like, I can't do this no more. This ain't worth it. That garage was just so full of shit. It was ridiculous. So I guess what I'm saying is,
I don't think I've ever seen that garage open before.
I have. I assure you, it was open quite a bit. It was still like beach balls and balloons from his 3rd birthday. You know what I'm saying? Just crap. Look, like I said, these rules are not just for order, but these rules are to help you and guide you, so you're not surprised by what the world has. And I think that people think everything's a joke now, and people like ambiguity right now, and like, oh, it's not black and white, it's gray. It might be gray, but for your kids, it needs to be black and white and digestible. You know what I'm saying? Information needs to be digestible, just like food. And I think that's what we're missing in this world, is that we don't want them to. We're trying to prepare them for life, but we're preparing them for the life that we're in. We need to prepare them more over, like, hey, how to deal with this, what's right, what's wrong, give you the energy and the power that you need. How do you cook this? How do you cook that? What do you do on this? What do you do with that? That's what you need to be giving your kid. And then when they get older and they're like 17, 18, and they're like, wow, what about this? Hey, Dad, did you see that? Like, yeah, that's not a good situation, son. Hey, daughter, like, look, I don't want you hanging out with those kind of people. That right there. If you don't give them a good foundation, you can't raise them, correct them the way they need to be corrected.
So you need to have rules to organize your mind, organize your life, organize your living space. Work on what you can control and fix that first. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.